Okay, so welcome back, everyone. We're here for yet another session. This time it's a round table on the Global Foresight Summit 2021 edition that we are going to be talking beyond uncertainty. So for this round table, we have Pasi Amayo that is going to be leading and moderating the round table on the Next Generation Foresight Practitioners. So this is a program that the School of International Futures is running every year. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's still open for this year award. Can people still apply for that? Yeah, so people can still apply, and here we have people that were part of the previous years. Pasi, I leave this on your site, and you introduce the rest of the people. We also have Namatai here, so I add her to the stream. Perfect. So welcome, Namatai. So I remove myself, and I leave this on your site.
Thank you very, very much for that introduction. Hello and welcome to this panel discussion. We are, as you have heard, members of the Next Generation Foresight Practitioners Network, and we are pleased to be part of this 3-day Global Foresight Summit. My name, as you have heard, is Pasi Amayo, and I'm the NGFP African Network Keeper, and I am excited to be your host today. This afternoon, I am joined by 3 award-winning futurists, NGFP fellows, Raya Bichari, Namatai Kwekweza, and Finn Striven, whose voices will highlight their foresight journey, the impact that they have made along the way, and the power of supporting and mentoring emerging futurists. I also want to acknowledge the presence of NGFP fellows, Something Network members, judges, and collaborators who are watching us live. We appreciate and applaud your support and work and the impact that you are making within your various spheres of influence. Thank you very much. We're also joined on this roundtable by Peter Glende, the Program and Research Director at the School of International Futures, who will give us a flashback story about the establishment of the Next Generation Foresight Practice and Awards in 2018. But before I welcome our well-abled panel, allow me to share a little bit about the Next Generation Foresight Practitioners Practice. The Next Generation Foresight Practitioners Practice was established by the School of International Futures and exists to accelerate the transformation of the next generation of change makers, using foresight as a tool to envision inclusive and equitable futures globally. It supports them by driving their integral role in agenda setting and connecting them with today's decision makers. With over 350 members from 69 countries across 6 continents, the NGFP Fellows and the NGFP Sensing Network is one of the largest global networks of future alert activists and practitioners in the world. It is a global community of change agents equipped with the tools to drive the global transformation that is so urgently needed in this present day. The Next Generation Foresight Practitioners Awards was established in 2018 to explicitly address a lack of representation of young, non-Western future alert activists in decisions, conversations, and changes that are taking place in communities around the world, whether at a global level, regional, or local level. The 2021 NGFP Award, as you have heard, are now open. And this year, there are going to be different types of opportunities to apply for. The main award for those who are aged 18 to 35 or with less than 5 years experience in foresight work. Winners will receive US dollars 10,000 as prize to support a futures project, receive mentoring, support, and attend the SWAF summer retreat. There are also 6 funded special awards of US dollars 2,500 each, focused on forced labor and human trafficking, peace building, projects in the MENA region, East Asia, and small island and developing states. And finally, technology and security also as a focus for awards this year, as well as a geographic and other sectoral awards. So please apply. Also featured in this year's awards is the 2 Walkabout Prizes and the new Young Voices Awards for emerging change makers between the ages of 12 and 17 years in partnership with the incredible team at Teach the Future. All winners are invited to become NGFP fellows like those here with us today. But beyond the awards, the NGFP practice has had some exciting programs that highlight and support the work of new generation thinkers further. We have just concluded a group futures process on data governance and digital futures in Africa. And we're just about to launch the Africa Futures Leadership Series, which is scheduled to begin in mid-June with a cohort of 22 emerging foresight leaders from Africa. And we also have plans underway to launch an NGFP podcast to highlight and share with you the stories that young people are doing across the globe in the foresight space, and an impact fund by September this year. So if you are inspired, as we are, to support the next generation of foresight practitioners, I call upon you to apply for the award or get involved in this community as a judge, collaborator, and partner. And with that, we'll go right into our conversation this afternoon. So Raya, I will begin with you. You were the NGFP main award winner last year. Tell us a little bit about how you entered the foresight community and what the journey and impact of your work has been since.
Thank you, Pasi. Thank you, Pasi, for that lovely introduction, and I'm honored to be on this panel alongside some amazing people. Yeah, it's kind of surreal because I remember this time last year, we were in lockdown in Dubai, and I remember my whole family had gotten COVID at that point, and I was in isolation, and that was the context in which I applied for the Next Generation Foresight Awards. And I applied with this vision of, a vision for an alternative school system, an alternative school model that would better prepare young minds to create an exciting future for humanity. And was just an honor to be the main prize winner. And I'm very excited to let everyone know that a year, since that has passed, we just launched last month the School of Humanity, which is an online high school like no other, where we focus on an interdisciplinary curriculum and where learners actually develop future skills by solving global challenges. And since launching, we've had registrations from over 12 countries. And what I want to spend just some time in the introduction talking about is the role that the NGFP Awards play in helping us take that idea from just an idea, a vision, towards something that has actually now come into reality. And for everyone that is considering applying, I think there's a couple of really beautiful benefits and advantages of going through the application process. One, as soon as you apply, as we all like to say, you join the sensing network, you join a community and network of incredible intellectuals, thought leaders, doers, thinkers, who are really putting in a lot of effort in reimagining the future of our species. And so just going through that application process helps you join that community. But as a winner, it's more than just access to the capital and resources that you get to, make your vision a reality. You also get access to mentorship. You get to participate. In our case, it was virtual retreats, but in your case, it would be probably in-person retreats. And lots of other kind of support systems in terms of outreach and PR and getting your project out there. So what I'll wrap up by saying is the experience was really beautiful. It was really powerful. I'm very grateful to the NGFP and SWAF teams for making it happen. And I'm very grateful, especially as a young person, because I've seen that young people have so many incredible, amazing ideas, and this project and competition in many ways allows them to access funding and mentorship and the network required to make their ideas a reality.
Thank you so much, Raya, for sharing that with us. I think the main thing that you have said that has resonated with me is being able to be supported to turn your vision into reality. Thank you so much for that. Finn, I want to come to you. Just share with us how you got into the foresight space and what kind of impact you have been able to make so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, thank you for inviting me to be here and speak alongside you all. But I was doing a master's program this time last year in design, where I was trying to fuse speculative design with public engagement of science to try and sort of bring more people into the process of creating sort of futures objects. I would say I didn't have much awareness that there was this sort of foresight field out there. And once I found this award and then obviously won the Walkabout Prize for last year, then it really did make me sort of try and take up this mantle, get a lot more involved in reading about foresight and future studies, and then try and develop new work that sort of encompassed those learnings into the projects I was doing in a way that I really hadn't done before. And I think the other transition that I really had from doing this master's research was that in that sort of set of projects, I was very much trying to involve a general public. And I think this award was really formative for me in helping me sort of focus down onto an audience, trying to work with younger people, and trying to really develop foresight approaches that are suitable for context that young people find themselves in, but also sort of appropriate and fun and enjoyable for young people to participate in different ways. So that, I suppose, is my sort of purpose at the moment. And then in terms of the impact I've been able to have, I might just mention a couple of projects, because my approach is probably more of a portfolio approach than Raya's, where one of the projects I've been doing, for example, is working with the Imperial Geoscience Department and trying to sort of reframe some of their outreach events, often that go and sort of talk to young people about what geoscience careers are available. So I've tried to make sort of guerrilla futures thinking games that reframe those events. So rather than telling people what careers are available, we start by imagining possible futures of the Earth, possible challenges that will arise in Earth sciences, and then come up with our own careers that might be available and discuss those with geoscientists to try to sort of empower these young people and reframe those activities. This week, I'm also working with an amazing youth organization called Young Creators UK. I'm in their amazing building on the South Bank at the moment, which they're renting for a further 5 weeks before it gets demolished. This is a youth creators organization who are sort of guerrilla filmmakers. They work with young people, often in quite difficult circumstances in South London, often who haven't had any kind of formal education or have struggled in education. And they teach them creative skills, put them on professional projects, and get them doing high quality media work. So I'm doing a week-long workshop with them this week, where we're practicing world building, we're practicing futures thinking and critical thinking, and we're using that to create a series of speculative films that communicate their visions on the future of biodiversity and the future of pollinators. So both sort of combining this into a youth consultation, but also teaching these really valuable skills to these incredible young people. So that is a trial program at the moment, but we're really hoping to scale it and try and make this sort of new method for a really fun and engaging youth skills building program that doubles up as this futures consultation.
Thank you so much, Finn. That is so exciting. And I really love the idea of making foresight fun for not just yourself, but also other young people, and especially young people who have never heard about the foresight field. So it's very exciting to hear the work that you're doing and the impact that you're making in that space. I want to bring in another voice, Namatai Kwekweza, to just share with us also her experience and how you joined the foresight space and the kind of impact you're making with the work that you're doing in the foresight space? Namatai. Try again. We can hear you, but it seems like you're on mute. No, we cannot hear you. Maybe we can just check for any tech help in the background, and maybe just welcome more comments. Please feel free to use the chat box to share in your comments and your questions as they come in, so that we can also engage with you as our audience for today. But Namatai, we're just going to come back to you in a few minutes, just so that we can see if we can fix the sound from your end. But we're really looking forward to hearing your story as well. But as we're waiting for Namatai to share her story with us, maybe I'm going to bring you back in, Raya, to just share with us your NGFP experience, especially with the awards year. I mean, what was the opportunity like for you as a winner? And what value did you find in mentorship and the support that you received on your projects after winning the award? Just share with us a little bit about your experience and what that was like and why it's important. Right.
Of course, I think that anytime you're starting a new organization, of course, one of the things you need is capital and that kind of financial resources. The other pieces of it is having the right mentors, alliances, collaborators to work with, and thirdly, just having the right kind of team to support you as well. And so the NGFP awards for me, I think, helped with all of those things. Getting the mentorship, especially focusing on really everything from, how to set up the structure of the organization, to how to set the mission and the vision, and how to actually, spread the word and tap into the right talent. At the School of Humanity, a core part of what we do is also focused on bringing industry mentors and guest speakers and learning facilitators from around the world, and having like global cohorts for learners from now over 12 countries. So being a part of that NGFP network and the SWAF network was really helpful in finding the right people who share our mission and vision, and bringing them in as mentors and whatnot. So that was also really powerful. And overall, I think the experience is just really inspiring and eye-opening as well. I've learned so much from my peers in the SWAF space and in all the retreats that we've done. There were lots of sessions similar to this one at a larger scale, where we kind of all presented the different works that we're doing. Ended up having lots of one-on-one calls with people in the same network, exploring partnerships and collaborations. So I say there's a lot there in terms of value add. Yeah, once again, really grateful for all of it.
Thank you. And I'm going to come back to you again, Raya, just so that you can speak a little bit more about the School of Humanity and the other incredible projects that you have done as a young person in the future space. But I'll come to you, Finn. Just share with us a little bit more about the mentorship, the support, learning from other people who are more experienced in the foresight space. What was that like for you? And why do you think this is important from an intergenerational perspective in the foresight space, but also just how that resonated with you and the importance that came out of that mentorship and support?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to say is that the foresight space is a little bit crazy, absolutely enormous, and there are all sorts of people doing very, very different projects with different objectives. So I think there's just, I suppose, back to the theme of the conference, this huge amount of uncertainty, and for a young person in that space, that means it's quite hard to have that confidence to sort of take a new direction and really experiment. So I think for me, one of the main benefits of the award was this confidence to try things out, and part of that is in this sort of in having won it, I suppose, in the first place, and the sort of validation of your work, saying yes, that's actually an idea that we think could work. You're not crazy, so try it out. But I think the second part, which I find incredibly valuable, is the mentorship I've had with Kat. So as part of my award, I speak to Kat every month, who's the sort of head of SWAF. And she has this sort of irreverence about her, which makes her just say, yes, go do it. Screw what everyone else thinks. Like, if you think that's a good idea, then absolutely you should be trying it out. And I think that is exactly the kind of confidence that we need to be sort of giving to young people. It's so easy to sort of modify your ideas because of what has been done before, but I think there is also an enormous amount of value in coming to a field sort of fresh, I suppose, without necessarily having the sort of weight of all that sort of experience, and particularly if you're designing things for young people, then really starting from the point of, okay, I'm working with this group of young people, what's going to work for them, and then trying to bring foresight into that, rather than starting from this point of, okay, this is what the field of foresight is used to doing, how can we sort of modify that for young people? So I suppose it's trying to come at it from a different direction. Besides that, just the range of people within the NGFP network is fantastic. I've had a fantastic opportunity to speak to many of them. We've come up with projects together, applied for funding and grants together as pairs. So that network is really exciting in terms of the different ideas and sort of things that it can throw up in the future.
Thank you, Ben, for sharing that. I think it's very, very important to consider the different contexts of young people, especially when you're designing such projects for them. And I think that's one thing that, we usually tend to leave out when designing things. I mean, different contexts, different people, and young people have various interests, especially in the future space. I love that. And also the experimental nature of the foresight space and how it allows you to use your imagination and go beyond just what is in front of you is such a beautiful thing and very experimental in nature. So thank you. I want to bring in Peter. Peter, a lot has been said about the role that SWAF has played, the mentorship received by exceptional personalities such as Kat Tootie. I want to just bring you in maybe to share with us a little bit, not everything, about what the SWAF vision, why young people, why did you see the need to create a program that brings in a new voice, a new generation through their awarding system, and then we'll bring Namatai in to share her story. So Peter, I'm going to give you the floor at this point.
Brilliant, thank you, Passy. And I think the words already shared by Finn and Raya are probably going to do a better job of explaining it than I can. But we kind of set this up in 2018 because we're aware that there's all these amazing initiatives, works, ideas happening around the world by people who aren't always supported or in the conversations or necessarily have the confidence or the opportunity to take some of those ideas forwards. And we kind of set up the NGFP awards, which has now grown into this program to be in service really to those people, to try and help provide that kind of confidence that Finn was talking about, as well as some financial backing. We'd love to do more, but we have limited resources. But at least to try and start to nurture, bring these amazing kind of young thinkers together, to try and start nucleus and grow this kind of sensing network that's now emerging. And I think we'll hear from Namatai in a second. It's starting to have impact, especially one of the things that brings us most joy is seeing all the collaborations that people are starting to kind of develop. And we're hoping to set up an impact fund, which we're funding for the fellows later this year with to help them start having small and slightly larger amounts of money to try and experiment a bit more and innovate and collaborate around some of these projects. But we weren't trying to replace some of the amazing work that already is done around by the kind of APF, the Association of Professional Futurists, where they have their Emerging Futurist Awards, which is much more in the kind of traditional and kind of innovative practitioner space. There's also all amazing competitions supporting young leaders, but we felt that there was a need and an opportunity to kind of try and support this network, and that they would bring their diverse voices together, and that kind of dialogue and that innovation and collaboration would really potentially grow into something. We feel we're kind of on that journey. The network is expanding. We're seeing interest and traction, and I think the impact stories from Finn, Ryan, and Namatai kind of really kind of showcase that better than I can. And yeah, we hope long may it continue and grow. And if you are thinking about applying this year for the awards, please do kind of reach out and get in touch and join one of the Q&As that we're hosting to help you understand how to apply for the awards later this year.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing that background story. We really appreciate SWAF for the opportunity and the platform that you've created for younger generations to come and interact and use foresight as a tool. Now, Matai, I want to bring you in to share your story, and I'm hoping we have you now. So I'm just going to give you the floor to share with us how you got into the foresight space and what kind of projects you're doing in the future space. Oh no, I'm afraid we still can't hear you now, Matai. Yeah, so it's so sad. We really want to hear your voice, but let's just hope maybe we can try to do the technical thing again and come back. But I want to shift the conversation a little bit, Namatai, before we can have you join us with your voice. I want to bring in the aspect of strategic foresight for impact, and just kind of bring in your voice, Raya and Finn again, on how you are using foresight as a tool to influence policy or to influence decision makers, or even to just influence behavior change in the communities that you work with. And it's a little bit of a shift, but I want to just get it into your brain a little bit on how foresight can be used effectively by young people in these various places and levels for decision making in different platforms. So maybe I'll start with you, Raya, if that's okay. Now, what is the work that you're doing and how you're using foresight to influence policy and other decision makers in different spaces?
I love that question. And just a few days ago, I was on a podcast where someone asked me what the role of futures thinking and foresight is in the education space in particular. And I think one of the challenges with our education system globally is that it's a challenge of imagination and it's a challenge of narrative. There are some of these industrial era narratives and assumptions that we carry with us about how we think we ought to teach and learn. There are assumptions we make, such as, expecting X number of hours of schooling for kids to go through, or we still carry this assumption that we have to have tests and exams, or that we have to isolate knowledge into subjects, right? So if you look at any global education system anywhere in the world, it usually has those features, and that's the kind of story we tell ourselves about education. Now, a part of where futures thinking can apply to the space is, can we imagine a future with a completely radically different education system, right? Imagine we were to redesign the system from scratch to meet the needs of the 21st century world. And imagine we decided to move away from the structure of tests and exams and subjects, or even having curriculum to begin with. And I think that's where you begin that exercise of futures thinking used to reimagine an education system. And it's very much the kinds of thought processes that my team and I applied when we were envisioning and ideating the School of Humanity. Now, there's an application at the student level as well. There's a beautiful quote from the ruler of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, that I always like to share. He says that the future, it does not belong to those who wait for it, but rather create it. It's not something you predict, but it's something that you imagine, design, and execute. So a part of the curriculum that we've developed at the School of Humanity is around teaching young minds the skills, competencies, and values that allow them to imagine, design, and execute an exciting future for our species. So that's really the starting point for which we use to design our education model, to design our curriculum. So I think that also kind of gives you a sense of the application of foresight and futures thinking in the field that I operate in.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Raya. I think a quote that resonates a little bit with the one you just shared is one that I use to just explain why foresight is important. And I don't know who said this, but I read it somewhere. It says, the future belongs to the prepared. So, the foresight space kind of gives you the ability to prepare for an unforeseen future or uncertainties, being able to work with young people to be able to imagine the kind of futures they desire, but move beyond imagining by using this tool to influence policy and decision makers to act towards creating the future that they envision and desire is very, very powerful. So thank you for sharing that with us. Finn, I'm going to come to you with the same question. How are you applying strategic foresight for impact in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so in terms of policy impact, I suppose there's a spectrum of sort of approaches that I'm sort of interested in and trying to use. On one end, it's about how we communicate the results of these strategic foresight exercises and how we can actually get that to be listened to in policy spheres. So I think this is the classic problem of all sort of citizens consultations and citizens assemblies, is that you can produce the nicest report in the world, but how do you actually get anyone to act on it? And I think that's something that I'm experimenting with this Youth Futures project. One of the sort of organizations that it's in collaboration with is the European Commission, and particularly the Joint Research Centre, who are doing lots of research on sort of pollinator policy as part of the European New Green Deal. So one of the goals here is to make these speculative films with young people and then have them share those speculative films throughout the organization. This isn't a sort of method that's going to get any sort of concrete recommendations into policy, but we hope that, you know, it might sort of bring up things that people haven't considered about, and by presenting it in an engaging sort of cultural format, then it might actually get people talking about it and thinking about it in a way that they haven't before, which has the potential for that sort of soft impact into a policy space. And then one of the other projects I'm doing is actually with SWAF. I've been involved with the National Strategy for the Next Generations. So this is a brilliant program around the integrated review in the UK, which is a government-led review into national security that happens every 5 years. But in the UK, it's covering a very broad range of subjects at the moment. So it looks more like a review into the future of the UK. So I've been lucky enough to get involved in helping to design a sort of national dialogue for young people, which includes a number of futures workshops, but also sort of citizens assemblies. We had a trial in the autumn, and it's now looking to scale. And this would be a process which is directly working with Number 10 and the Cabinet Office and writing reports about young people's views on the future narrative of the UK, and really working closely with policymakers to try and implement that into the final outcomes of the integrated review, but also to make a policy process that can be done for future integrated reviews, and to really set up that as a channel that can be replicated time and time again. So I suppose that's my two extremes of getting involved in these sort of national scale programs, but also really trying to take this sort of softer, more creative approach.
Thank you so much for that, Finn, and for explaining that further. I think definitely we're seeing how foresight can be used to influence policy at different levels, and how we can encourage young people to be able to do that. But what I also hear coming out of the conversation that we've had so far is the power of partnership, the power of doing things as a community and doing it together. And I just want to bring you back, Peter, into the conversation, just because I know SWAF is very keen on strategic foresight, even with the summer retreats that you do. Tell us a little bit of why, how SWAF incorporates a strategic foresight for impact in its work. But beyond that, just bringing in the young people as well. Foresight as a field is missing in different regions, and I know recently we've had the opportunity to bring in or have our work focus on specific regions, starting with Africa, for example. So your question is twofold: what is the SWAF position and work in strategic foresight, and what is the importance of bringing in or promoting foresight in other regions where it's limited or lacking? So Peter, I'm going to bring you in for a few minutes to just talk to us a bit about this.
Yeah, thank you, Passy. I mean, at SWAF we talk, we're a non-profit collective of kind of practitioners doing policy strategy and planning for future generations, or at least that's how we're talking about ourselves this year, and have been for a while. Foresight is very much central to the work that we do, but we also look at kind of other ways of incentivizing long-term thinking and decision-making, whether it's looking at governance, capability building, mechanisms for really driving systemic long-term thinking across communities, governments, organizations, nonprofits. That's kind of, we work in quite a lot of different ways. And if people caught Julie Jensen-Bennett's piece yesterday on the kind of intergenerational fairness work that we're doing, she mentioned, I think, that we, it's a really kind of, a lot of the work we do is about, if we believe that a better tomorrow starts better decisions today, what is it that we can start doing now to make things better, and how do we hold each other account to the kind of short and long-term consequences of the work that we're kind of all doing today. So we were set up in 2011. This year we are 10-year anniversary, and really that was about bringing leaders and decision makers together to learn how to do strategic foresight better, to share. So that kind of community sharing perspective has always been at the heart of the work that we do. As the work, a focus on participation and bringing in voices that can be marginalized, not always present in conversations around policy and strategy, or other kind of decisions that really affect them and will affect future generations as well. And that kind of really resonates with the kind of the NGFP program, where we are kind of really looking to accelerate the kind of work of emerging change makers and activists, to help identify them, help nurture them, help amplify their voices and insights, and accelerate transformation. So it's all part of a kind of broader package of work that we do at SWAF. Some of us are much more engaged in the NGFP, some of us are much more working direct with companies, organizations to change the way that they think and they operate, and help them understand insights about the emerging future. But all the work that we do really is kind of trying to connect to having impact and kind of bringing value to communities. So we've done work across, we did some work a few years back with an energy company in Nigeria, but it was very much focused about what it is that they can kind of co-create with their communities and better support the energy transition in Nigeria, rather than being focused on how to kind of maximize their profits. And their company, they obviously want to stay sustainable, to kind of grow, but they had a really great passion around kind of what it is that they can do in service to their community, which is why we wanted to work with them and kind of run capability and help them think through how to apply foresight to their strategy processes internally. So I think that's kind of a long way of saying that all the work we do is really about trying to change that kind of decision making today, and really have a focus on what it is you can do to integrate futures thinking and other kind of ways of incentivizing long-term thinking into your organizations or to your team, to your community. What are those kind of levers that you might have, whether it's upskilling, training, like the work that Raya is doing with, whether it's supporting the use of futures work in science and evidence-based policymaking that Finn is up to, or what I'm sure we're going to hear about now from Namatai, about the work she's really trying to do to really reset how people think about the future in her community in Zimbabwe.
Great, thank you so much, Peter. I think it's really nice to have your voice as a representative of SWAF, because it gives us a very deeper dive into NGFP and why it exists and why it should continue existing. And it's so incredible, the interlinkages that happen from a global spectrum within the School of International Futures, and how it trickles back to different practice, the intergenerational question, the next generation foresight practice, and so on and so forth. But I digress. I want to bring in Namatai to tell us finally about her stories. I'm crossing my fingers that we'll be able to hear your story now. So just tell us a little bit about your foresight story, the impact that you're making, the work you're doing in Zimbabwe and the continent, and just kind of offer some inspiration on the work that you're doing as a young futurist from the continent of Africa. Namatai. Oh no, we still can't hear you. This is so sad, but we have tried, and we really hope we could have been able to hear Namatai's story. But as a way of maybe making up for this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Namatai from the little that I know about her, and a lot, hopefully, as well. Namatai is 22 years old, and she has 5 years of experience in community organizing. social entrepreneurship, and human rights advocacy, mainly focusing on youth and women's rights. She is from Zimbabwe, and she is a disruptive thought leader and consultant who currently serves as an executive director of We Lead Trust, an organization that she founded at the age of 18 in 2017, which is focused on youth leadership development and advocacy. And I believe now also incorporating foresight and futures thinking into the work that We Lead Trust is doing. So Namatai is an awardee of the NGFP Walkabout Prize and a fellow of the NGFP network at the School of International Futures. She's also a Rotarian and an award-winning professional public speaker and a Toastmasters International in Southern Africa. And she also holds an executive certificate in diplomacy, protocol, etiquette, and professional branding. So she has done a lot of work in the foresight space, and she has been using her Walkabout Award to kind of bring in more young people into the space. And I know she has incredible ideas about setting up futures hubs in different parts of the continent. I'm hoping we'll be able to interact with her more. So feel free to look for her on social media, on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn, and hear more directly from her. I'm going to bring us back into the conversation. I see a lot of comments and questions coming in to the chat box, and I want to use this opportunity to answer some of the questions that I've seen coming in, and hopefully, panel, we are ready to answer some of these questions. So I did see a question coming in on intergenerational dialogue. And that is the question that I'm hoping we can answer at this point. It kind of seemed to have disappeared as I'm scrolling down. But the question was about how can we use intergenerational dialogue in the space, in the foresight space, in a manner that brings people together to be able to collectively vision for the future. I think also part of this question is, and in my context is, you know, as young people, we have very different visions of the future, and we always tend to think that the older generation are very disconnected from our visions. So how can we begin to have more intergenerational discourses, even within the foresight space? So I'm going to bring you in, Raya and Finn, because, you know, we're the younger people here. And then Peter, I'm going to give you an opportunity to also weigh in on this question. I'm going to start with you, Raya.
Sure. I think one really, really simple and easy way to do this is to bring more youth to the table in any context, right? Whether it is conferences, whether it is, you know, even dialogues and panels like this, or whether it's even in classroom or formal education spaces, trying to move beyond the boundaries of age and actually just thinking of all of us as humans. One of the models in education that is kind of picking up right now is this idea of a mastery-based model or a competence-based model. In such a model of education, instead of grouping year groups by age and telling all learners that at age 10 you're going to be in this grade and you're going to learn this curriculum, is allowing fluidity for learners of all ages, whether they're 40 or 10, to move through a certain curriculum or learning journey in a way that works best for them. And when you adopt such models, sometimes you end up with workshops or classrooms with learners who are as young as 9 and learners who are as old as 40. And we've actually been in this situation. Some of the sessions that we've done, we've had such a huge range of age groups. Sometimes you have younger, really gifted students, and sometimes you have, you know, individuals who just want to upskill, and even though they're adults. And that alone really helps kind of understand different generations, understand where people are coming from, and just kind of break down those generational gaps and perspectives and dialogue. So a really simple suggestion to the audience and to the world is anytime you're organizing something, don't have an age limit on it, or don't have a minimum age or a maximum age. Just keep it open.
Thank you. And I do appreciate and resonate with those views, Raya. Leave it open. Don't put a tag to it. Finn, I want to come to you and hear your sense. And this question was asked by Greening Futures. So you have the floor, Finn.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose I mean, there are two not very well-formed thoughts bubbling up about this. One of these is maybe drawing on some of the insights from the research into the National Strategy for the Next Generation Programme, one of which is going to the places where conversations are already happening, rather than necessarily trying to sort of build whole new arenas for these conversations. So I'd be really interested in finding sort of current community spaces that are intergenerational, or finding spaces that are sort of using organizations that are using the same space and are in very close proximity and could be easily sort of combined. So I've been talking to YC UK about their next offices, where they're planning this sort of crazy hub of all sorts of organizations like media professionals, but also having a big youth core and just mixing everyone together in that same space and just seeing what kind of chaos ensues. And I think that sort of like co-working, co-localization of projects can be really powerful. And then I suppose lots of my interest is in formats. So my other thing would be about making sure that the format itself isn't skewing itself to a certain kind of discussion. If we're having very adult discussions, then it's going to skew the conversation towards the sort of adults in the room in this very serious way of having those discussions, and not necessarily, even if they are in the room, give the same kind of opportunities for young people to air their opinions. So I do think having formats that maybe break down the norms of how we're used to interacting in these spaces, be that games, I'm really interested in how we can do it with role play, or even just consulting with young people and sort of asking them the kind of ways that they'd like to have these conversations, so that we're not going into it from a perspective of, okay, let's take an adult method to this intergenerational discussion, but really trying to come at it from a different place.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think just listening to you and Raya speaking reminded me of a conversation we had in our NGFP town hall recently. And it was about an initiative that one of our fellows is doing on future ancestors. So even the idea of age and learning from different generations is still having an innovative project being brought up by young people. So very, very inspiring. But Peter, I want to give you, and I see Namatai is back. So maybe I'm going to try test your mic, Namatai, just to see if it's working this time, because we really want to hear your voice. So maybe you can try say hi to us. Oh, unfortunately, it's still not working. We're really happy to have you here. And we did mention that we're going to be engaging, and the audience is going to be engaging you further in different social media platforms. But please feel free to stay with us. Don't leave the channel. Oh, she left. Peter, I'm going to come to you for maybe just 1 minute to hear your opinion on your sense on how we can incorporate into intergenerational dialogue in the future space, and how to make it work effectively from your perspective. And then we will kind of interact with the chat a little bit and wrap up our panel. Peter.
So I'm not the best person to talk about this. That would probably be Julie or Kat, because we've been doing a kind of a 2-year program with the Gulbenkian Foundation in Portugal, looking at how we potentially can develop, and we have developed a kind of a policy assessment tool to support decision making in policymakers for policymakers. And just 2 things that have come out of that approach, and I think complement the stuff that Finn and Raya have been talking about, is there's both kind of a need to change how policymaking is done inside, but also drive that kind of accountability and agency that citizens and young voices have over their futures, and kind of getting that to work effectively requires engagement across multiple groups. So with your experts, with the public, with the intergenerational guardians, as we potentially see happening in a lot of countries around the world, kind of different ways of having a kind of mechanisms or groups of citizens who are kind of mixed generations and bringing their voices, as has been done quite successfully in places like Japan, into policymaking. There are lots of approaches being done. There's barometers, audits of which you can track intergenerational progress over time. But really, without that kind of dialogue and engagement, and and some kind of mechanisms for driving accountability between political systems and kind of people who are outside of direct influence. I don't think any intergenerational issues will ever be kind of effective. So you need to kind of have the bottom-up participative community-based discussions, give voice to kind of young and future generations, but also really kind of improve how policy making is respecting and being kind of influenced by those conversations as well.
Thank you so much, Peter, for sharing with us that. And yes, we also welcome you to interact with the other practices that are happening in SWAF. I think all of them are interrelated at the end of the day, such as the intergenerational fairness practice, which resonates very closely with the NGFP practice. I want to go to our chat box just to check whether we have any questions for us to answer. But I can also say that there have been some very interesting dialogues happening in the chat box. I want to thank our audience for being very, very active. So we don't have a question coming in at this point, but there is the quote that I was talking about before. It was by Malcolm X, and the actual quote is, "The future belongs to those who prepare for it today." I also see here that Osmar has recommended a book for those in the future space to read. And he says, have you read the philosopher Jun Han from South Korea? He has this book about the definition of power, bringing it closer to what we understand as the future. So maybe a recommendation from our audience for a book that we should go ahead and read. We have about 2 minutes to wrap up, so I want to give each one of us just about 20 seconds for your final words for our audience as we close the panel. I'll start with you, Finn.
Okay. I think my final recommendation would just be to check out the NGFP Awards, and please encourage everyone to apply, because I think the experience for me has been transformational and has opened, I don't know how many different doors and amazing opportunities. So, you know, if someone has the opportunity to apply for this award, they definitely should.
Thank you so much, Finn. I'm going to give you, Raya, 20 seconds, your last thoughts.
Sure, I'm just going to build on what Finn said and say, in addition to applying, take the link for the Young Awards, the ones for ages 12 to 17, I believe, and send it to all the teenagers so that they apply as well. That's my recommendation.
Oh, yes, bringing everybody to the community. Peter.
I think Finn and Raya have said it. The website is nextgenforesight.org/awards if anyone wants to find the awards and needs to find it. A big thank you to Finn, Raya, Pasi, Namate, and also to Miguel and the team at Fast Forward for organizing this.
Great. And with that, as your host today, I want to thank you for tuning in and encourage you to continue listening to the rest of the sessions for the Global Foresight Summit. And to just let you know that whether you're in the foresight space or not, this is your opportunity to join our community and help us shape the future that we desire for our generation and for the generations to come. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to continuing this conversation beyond this platform. Thank you and have a good rest of the day. And I hand the floor back to the Global Foresight team.
One thing, Pasi, you forgot to say your closing 20-second statement.
Oh, yes, I think I just did. I encouraged everybody to join our community and to work together with us in shaping the futures that we desire for our generation and the generation to come.
Okay, so thank you everyone, Peter, Finn, Raya, and Pasi. It's been lovely. We are very sorry with the issues and the sound with Namatai. We tried hard on the private chat to solve it, going in and out, but it was very difficult given the remote distance in between us. But we will try to make better connections in the future and find a way to solve these kind of issues. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Soif, the Next Generation Foresight Practitioner Award, and everyone else. Stay on the website. We are continuing with yet another session. Bye-bye.